Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
This is Mr. Chris Claremont, a legend.
Melody goes,
Fire.
Happy Tuesday, all you minties. It is that time of the week where I do an advanced look at all the collected editions coming out from Marvel Comics this week. So let's go ahead and start. And welcome back, everybody. So today we are looking at books that are coming out the week of November 7th or 8th, depending on where you get your books. And a big thank you to David Gabriel and all the folks at Marvel for sending us an advanced copy of each of these books. And what we're looking at here is a reprint of a classic epic collection, some new comics that have come out in the miniseries or ongoing series, and then one of the Saga books, which are those big, thick books like epic collections. We got a few books to talk about. As always, I like to remind people to check out the description of the video because that's where you can find the timestamps to when I'm talking about a particular book or a particular series. And also, there are other Omnis coming out this week from Marvel Comics, so don't forget that. I think, is it Daredevil comes out this week? I'm sorry, I filmed them about a week in advance, so I did Blade yesterday, and that doesn't come out till next week. So it must be Daredevil and Captain America. That's what's coming out this week. All right. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Ring that bell for notifications. Let's go ahead and start with the X-Verse, X-Men, X-Women. So here we have X-Men, X-Verse, X-Women. So many X's for ages 10 plus, $9.99. Now, this is one of those Marvelverse books, so they're a little bit smaller. They're the size of like a tankobon. So these are digest size, so to kind of give you an idea of the size comparison here, it is next to a trade paperback of standard size. This is an epic collection. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up this book and talk about what exactly is in this particular X-Verse, X-Men. So this time around, they're focusing on just the ladies of the X-Men. And here's your table of contents, what's collected in here. And I will say, depending on who you're talking to, some of these stories are in continuity and others are not part of canon. Because it collects the X-Men First Class, #1. This is where Sue Storm comes and helps Professor Xavier teach this new young mutant how to kind of control her powers. And that is, of course, Jean Grey. The artwork in there is by Roger Cruz. So what else is collected in here? Well, you have the Uncanny Origins #9. This is a kind of a reimagining of Storm's origin. It's her story, how she got started in Cairo, what ended up happening to her family. Then you have the Uncanny X-Men First Class, issue #4 in here. And this is from 2009. Again, this is one that, you know, some people think it's canon. This takes place back in the early days. And it is Jean Grey and Storm when they were really becoming good friends. And then, of course, Colleen Wing and Misty Knight joining in that particular story. You have the Marvel Age. This is the Spider-Man team-up book, #5. This is where Spider-Man comes in here and tries to fight Rogue. And another one that, like I said, is told that probably those Marvel Age books don't tend to be in canon, but some, you know, some folks do consider them canon. And then you have Women of Marvel #1 here, which focuses on Rogue and Mystique here. And it is just part of that particular issue. And then you have part of the Marvel Voices, Indigenous Voices here. And this one featuring Rain and Danny Moonstar. And then the variant covers back here. This book retails for $9.99 and it has 118 pages. Next up is your Mighty Marvel Masterworks, The Fantastic Four. This is volume 3, and you have the direct market cover over here, and the standard edition cover over here, and then the spines in the back are different. This being a limited print run, and this is volume 28 of all the Marvel Masterworks in case you're collecting them. And then the standard over here that has an unlimited print run. So collected in here is Fantastic Four, issues 21 through 29. You have Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, of course, working together on this. George Russo's and Chick Stone are the inkers, and your letter Sam Rosen and Art Simek. And no really credit for the colors. Here's your table of contents, and we kick it off with the Hate Monger story. This book has 216 pages, and it's really interesting that we're still continuing the world's greatest comic magazine title up there. I think that goes back all the way to like issue number 5 or 4, maybe 6. But we do have the Hate Monger story in here. It's pretty much the Fantastic Four fighting each other until, of course, Nick Fury shows up and helps them save the day. That is a very famous picture right there, because I'm sure if you've been online before, you probably know where the original photograph came from. And this is the Fantastic Four, issue number 22. And this features the return of the Mole Man. As a matter of fact, this one is called The Return of Mole Man. The very first foe that the Fantastic Four fought. Then you can't have a Fantastic Four story without a visit from the bad Doctor. I almost said the good Doctor. But yes, Doctor Doom does make an appearance through this particular book. And then you have the Infant Terrible. It's the alien baby story. Yes, this particular story right here. And then issue 25 is the first big battle for Marvel Comics as far as like 2 of the big Goliaths. The Incredible Hulk versus the Thing. And it's such a big fight that the Avengers get involved, and it continues into issue number 26. And that does have some amazing artwork in here. Issue 27, I think that's the Submariner story, if I'm not mistaken. It's the Search for the Submariner? Yeah, the Search for the Submariner right here. And of course, featuring Doctor Strange. And then we do have another guest appearances with the next issue, and that is the X-Men. So you may be familiar with those teams. And then issue number 29. They, of course, by the way, the X-Men are not friendly at first because something's going on behind the scenes. It started on Yancey Street. This has Ben and his friends returning to an old neighborhood where they find a trap by not just a bunch of apes, but a gentleman known as the Red Ghost. And yes, that is the Watcher back there. And that is all what's collected in this particular volume. This one has 216 pages and again retails for $15.99. And to the people that have been asking if these have been discontinued because they didn't see any in the upcoming solicitations, no, they've got them figured out all the way to July of 2024. So they are continuing this line. GROOT, Uprooted. This is a really interesting read because I had just finished reading Guardians of the Galaxy, and I was like, oh, hey, it's a story about Groot. This is a different Groot, that's for sure, or a different time in Groot's life, because right now we're dealing with GROOTFALL in the pages of Guardians of the Galaxy, and I'll explain a little bit more about that when we look at that book. So this right here is the return of Dan Abnett to one of the characters that he didn't really create, but he really helped kind of modernize for a lot of people, and that is Groot. I mean, brought him into the pages of the Guardians of the Galaxy, because before that particular miniseries, and I know it wasn't DNA that wrote that, but before that miniseries, you know, when Keith Giffen wrote that Star-Lord miniseries, Groot was not part of the Guardians of the Galaxy, had never been. And then, of course, he went on to be a huge part, almost like the heart of the Guardians of the Galaxy a lot of times, between him and Rocket Raccoon. But this happens when he was still just a twig, a baby, if you will. But his entire planet is being destroyed. So Planet X is being attacked by this huge monster invader. And we have a bunch of Kree warriors that are kind of circling that particular planet. So they decide to send a couple of Kree warriors down here to investigate. One of them is Captain Solar, who you may not have heard of. But this guy right here, he's a private, and his name is Mar-Vell. So this takes place in the past. So before Mar-Vell became Captain Marvel, that's when this is all taking place. Now Groot is not alone. He shows up with a couple of friends here, Tweeg and Gleef, and together with the help of Private Mar-Vell, they're going to try to figure out exactly what is going on in the planet, who is destroying the planet. And they run across somebody else, because you can't just have Mar-Vell talk to these characters by themselves. This is Yarda, and yes, you probably are familiar with that type of species right here if you've been reading the Guardians of, not just Guardians of the Galaxy, but also the Avengers You've seen the character of Yondu, but this is Yarda, and she is going to be kind of the other voice here. Otherwise, it would be just Gleef, Tweeg, I Am Groot, and Marvel just talking to these three. So I thought that was a really good addition to this particular story. So between all 5 of them, they have to figure out what is going on, who is destroying this planet, and why exactly it's happening. The artwork in here is done by Damian Cuixedo, and the covers are done by one of my favorite artists, and that is Lee Garbett. And all the way in the back, we do have some of the extras like this. And again, all of this taking place in the past, so you have the variant covers back here. This book retails for $15.99, and it has 112 pages and collects all 4 issues of the miniseries Groot. The one that came out in 2023. This is the Al Ewing series. Yeah, but the Groot in the new Guardians of the Galaxy, so different than this. Planet of the Apes, Fall of Man. I remember seeing this cover when it was announced that Marvel was going to do their own Planet of the Apes series. And this collects all 5 issues of that series. So this is 20th Century Studios with Marvel Comics. And even up at the top, you see the 20th Century Studios. And then the Marvel logo right here in association with Marvel. And this is another story that reimagines the story of the Planet of the Apes. And I have not read the books, so I don't know if this is closer to the books or... Well, I can tell you it's not like the movies, whether the new movies that have been coming out or the classic movies, nor the TV shows, the original TV show, nor the cartoon. So maybe it's its own thing, but it could be, like I said, since I haven't read the actual books, it could be like the books. So it all starts in San Francisco in 2011, which makes me think it might be partially like the books. And we have scientists experimenting on a particular chimpanzee. And then, of course, it starts showcasing exactly what's going on. The simian flu is starting to spread. The ALZ-113 virus is just running its rampage across the world. And apes are flourishing. They're not getting sick. So it's humans that are the ones that are getting sick from this simian flu. So we meet a couple of characters through here that are really interesting. And, you know, I hate getting attached to characters because I don't know how long this series is going to go. But I also know the outcome of stories like this, if this is going to go towards Planet of the Apes. So it's like, oh, well, I guess I can't get too attached. So we meet the character, this little guy right here with the white stripe on his hair. That is Buster. And Buster's taken into custody so scientists can do experiments on him. But he's taken in by this young lady right here. This is Juliana Tobin. And one of the things you learn through her flashback, I wanted to come to here because this is kind of like the present day, is that she had a sister and something horrible happens to her sister. But her sister communicated through sign language, and that's something that she learned how to do so she could talk to her sister. And she's using that ability to talk to the apes. And, you know, the other soldiers are like, what the hell are you doing? You're talking to apes? And she's like, yeah, believe it or not, they're really smart animals. And he's like, well, dogs can learn commands, you know, that type of interaction between people that believe that apes can be good and people that are like, no, we got to get rid of them all because they're the cause of this horrible thing that's happening to the world. Now, that's just one story. In issue number 2, we have the smartest gorilla in the world. And I believe it starts in issue number 2 because issue number 1 is the whole thing. So from issue 2 to 5, because it collects all 5 issues of the mini, we start hearing or learning about this particular ape named Pug, who there are rumors from this particular diary, you don't know who is writing this, that he is the smartest ape and that he's learning to talk and communicate with other apes and teaching them how to talk and building their own society, while you still have the story of Juliana with Buster and the rest of those apes and trying to survive together. Now, whether these stories come together or not, I'm not going to say. You can find out for yourself. But it is really interesting that we have 2 different types of stories. One told through diary, and the other one told like this particular narrative, which we're not really looking at it through Juliana's narrative. It's more of Buster's narrative. So I thought that was really interesting. all the way in the back, we do have some extras. I say some because sometimes the variant covers are on the opposite side of the standard edition covers in between chapters. The book retails for $19.99, and it has 128 pages. This is the classic omnibus right here. And I don't know if they're continuing this with another mini, but if you know, let me know in the comments down below. Next up is the Warlock Rebirth, continuing that whole run of this story takes place in the past. That started, I think, with the Captain Marvel book, the Janice Fell book, and then it went into the Silver Surfer book, Silver Surfer Rebirth. But this is Ron Mars and Ron Lim. So both of them worked on Silver Surfer at one time, and they did the Silver Surfer Rebirth. And this is Warlock. It is the story of Adam Warlock, but it takes place in the past. So that's one thing to keep in mind. I like stories like this, right? Like retroactive stories. They aren't really retconning. They're kind of shoehorning characters in, not really changing anything. Because the people that were there at the time writing those stories are writing these stories. Claremont does it with his X-Men series. We've seen Larry Hama do something with the Wolverine character when he was Patch. We've seen Roger Stern write Avengers. So it's that same thing. So it's a retro story from the past. So it's legacy, and because of his meeting with Silver Surfer, and this is legacy Janice Vell, who will one day become Captain Marvel, he needs to go and find Adam Warlock because he thinks that Adam Warlock can help him. And of course, Adam Warlock is in a different planet. He meets Gamora and Pip, and they're like, yeah, sure, we'll take you to Adam Warlock. He's over here. So we get a quick little recap as to who Adam Warlock is, because they're explaining to Legacy, as he has known through this particular story, who Adam Warlock is. And then we see Adam just come out of this cave, and he got his butt handed to him by somebody inside of this cocoon. Like, there's a power that's seeping through this cocoon, and as it turns out, it's her. No, I don't mean her. Not that lady. It's this new character named Eve Warlock. And she's here to reclaim what is rightfully hers. She is supposed to be the Warlock, so she threatens Adam and all his friends if he doesn't hand over the Soul Gem, and that's exactly what all it takes for Gamora to just go out and cut loose and start fighting. So of course there's this big fight, because she doesn't really explain how she came to be, what's going on, and Adam Warlock's gem is ripped out of his forehead, and she starts wearing it. So the Soul Gem now belongs to her. She disappears, and oh my gosh, Pip is like, I think Adam Warlock is dead. Which, of course, this being a retroactive story, you pretty much know that he's not, right? He's somewhere in a dream sequence here. They take his body to Doctor Strange, and there is somebody that is behind the character of Eve Warlock that is pulling the strings. And you can find out who that is by reading the book. This collects the Warlock Rebirth all 5-issue miniseries. It is 112 pages, and in the back is where we have some variants. And the story does continue in another Silver Surfer Rebirth series. I think it's called Silver Surfer Rebirth Legacy. That cover by Phil Noto, awesome. And then other variant covers. 112 pages. Book retails for $15.99. And it has come to be that part of the video where we're looking at all the spines of the books coming out this week, as well as a reminder to smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. That does help with our YouTube algorithm and our channel keep growing. Alright, let's continue the overviews. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, GROOTFALL. Now, if you don't want to know anything about this, because I mentioned GROOTFALL, you're like, I'm already checking it out, I love Guardians of the Galaxy, by all means, skip to the next book. I don't want to spoil this for anybody, because this is the most recent series. Now, if you don't care about minor spoilers, just the setup for this, and you've already read it, or you've read it, I mean, then by all means, stick around. So this is the latest Guardians of the Galaxy series. This is the one that's written by Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly. And that already had me intrigued, because I really like both of those creators. Both of them had worked on the Captain America run that I really liked. But the big thing for me was this gentleman right here, Kev Walker, who I have just been enamored with since, like, the days of the Avengers. What was it, the Avengers Academy, and then they went on to do the Avengers Arena. and of course took over Thunderbolts for a while. And I think he went on to do a book with the Cosmic Ghost Rider, because the way that he draws Mantis, I got so excited when I thought it was a particular character from the DNA, or no, that was the Keith Giffen era of Drax. Yeah, thought it was Cammy, and I'll show you the picture here in a little bit. So what is happening through here? What the hell is GROOTFALL? Why does this look like a Western? Well, it looks like a Western because it kind of reads like one. We have the Guardians of the Galaxy that have been fighting this thing called the GROOTFALL for the last year, as we learned through Peter's inner monologue. So he is a Guardian of the Galaxy. They're kind of like the sheriffs of space, and they're going from planet to planet trying to get these people round up because the GROOTFALL is coming. And I love this picture. That has so much Arthur Adams vibe. And we've seen that before in the Guardians book, right? Like, we've seen Aaron Cooter draw Guardians of the Galaxy, and I get so much of that from this picture. It's a beautiful picture. There is Mantis right here. And, of course, Nebula, looking like she did in the movie. But yeah, I think this is one of the pictures I saw. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Cammy! And I don't think anybody else would have got excited except me for Cammy. So the Guardians are trying to get these people out of the planets because this GROOTFALL that is coming is going to destroy the planet. They've been experiencing it for the last year. They've been trying to save civilizations and different planets from this GROOTFALL, as they keep calling it. And there he is, Drax the Destroyer. And then we finally get to see like the first-hand experience of what this GROOTFALL can be. And what it is, it's this big like meteor with a face on it. Yeah, you know, you're used to cosmic characters whenever you have characters like Ego and stuff like that, that have faces. This one's really creepy because what it is, it's Groot, or maybe it's not Groot. I don't know. You can find out for yourself. And it is just taking over everybody's body. Like, everybody is becoming part of this Groot. So it just keeps repeating, "We are Groot. We are Groot," as it's absorbing all the people, and every living essence on the planet is being absorbed by this GROOTFALL, and all it keeps repeating is, "We are Groot." And that's what the Guardians are trying to stop. So, well, they didn't have that much luck. They had a little bit of luck in that first mission. There are also these big wars, like there's these civil wars happening between sectors, and they have the whole... It's a really interesting take on the Guardians, because we're not seeing a bunch of warriors out there anymore. We're kind of seeing like the space police, but they're really not that great at it. It really has... It reminds me of Firefly. So if you were a fan of Firefly, which is one of my favorite shows of all time, this definitely has that feel. You know, Peter has a lot of history with some of these characters that we're running across here. He's trying to, you know, bring peace to everybody because there's something horrible that is coming, and trying to warn people that it's coming. And finally, we get to find out what GROOTFALL can be. And we find out what it needs. But I don't want to spoil that. I just kind of wanted to give you the pitch. So in here, you're going to see Peter Quill. You're going to see Gamora. You're going to see Mantis. You're going to see Drax. And you're going to see Nebula. And is GROOTFALL Groot? And where the hell are the rest of the Guardians? Well, just keep on reading, because they're not the only Guardians that appear. And the back of the book, we'll just look at some variant covers. And I always like to remind people, this is an Aaron Cooter cover, that variant covers sometimes have absolutely nothing to do with what's inside of the book. I will go ahead and say I would love to see Nova come back, but I mean, no, Kitty Pryde. This book has the first 5 issues, and it retails for $17.99, and it has 128 pages. Star Wars Scoundrels, Rebels, and the Empire. A really interesting book because the Empire era of Star Wars is about to come up like to an end, and then we're going to get into the Return of the Jedi era. So what they're doing in here is kind of setting up the beginning of the Return of the Jedi. And of course, these are miniseries that are not collected in the trade paperbacks of the main Star Wars books. So collected in here is Star Wars, the Return of the Jedi, Jabba's Palace, the Ewoks, Lando, the Empire, the Rebellion, and Max Rebo, which is one of the most interesting reads through here. So we meet in this particular book this character right here of Sylvan Khan, and what he's trying to do is have an uprising and take over Jabba's place. And he's trying to get the help of this droid. So it's kind of like a scheming and betrayal in this particular story. All of it taking place right at the beginning of Return of the Jedi. So it makes it really interesting with how you see the scenes played out. Variant covers are sometimes on the opposite page of the standard edition covers. It's beautiful Peach Momoko. I don't know how many times I've said that on the show. This is a really cute story of the Ewoks. There's no dialogue in these. It's, I think, four different tales. Four different tales. One of them is horror. One of them is kids. One of them is adventure. And just how wonderful these little creatures are. I know. People hate the Ewoks, but Return of the Jedi was my first Star Wars movie in the theater with my dad. So it always has a special place in my heart. Even those ridiculous freaking little creatures. We see Lando and Chewie going into this particular casino to try to win some things that they're going to need for the Return of the Jedi. Again, seeing it from the perspective of these characters to set up this plot that doesn't happen until the next movie. We see the Empire right here with the character of Relo Grenth running into Endor and finding out something about the Empire that he probably shouldn't have found out. And then we have the Rebellion. This is the story of Akbar trying to stop this assassination of Mon Mothma. And what's really interesting in this one is that it has a couple of characters that play a bigger part. Well, how do I say it? Their offspring plays a big part in one of the movies series. That's all I'll say. Shara and Kess. And if I tell you Kess's last name, you're going to guess who that character is. And then we have the most interesting story, which is the Max Rebo and his band story. This one is crazy because it's all told through the perspective of Max Rebo and how he ended up getting into Jabba's palace. And again, taking place during the moments of Return of the Jedi when they're trying to rescue Han Solo. So this one is really interesting. This book has 216 pages and retails for $29.99, sorry. But the coolest thing about this collection, okay, so we have some variants, which are great. But then we have Chris Sprouse telling the story of Return of the Jedi through variant covers. And I wish these were all splash pages because they're beautiful. So we see some iconic scenes from Return of the Jedi, like them going to Jabba's palace. And I just assume most of you have seen Return of the Jedi, I hope. If you haven't, please stop watching now and go watch the next book, which is Echo. But yeah, this is just so freaking cool. I haven't seen a movie adaptation done through just covers because there was no movie adaptation comic. Not this time around, not from Marvel. I guess they were like, well, we've had Dark Horse do it. We did it ourselves. There's manga adaptations. Let's just do it through covers. And that's exactly what they did. 216 pages, $29.99. And that is Star Wars, Scoundrels, Rebels, and the Empire. Echo, the Saga of Maya Lopez. So here we have one of those saga books. So these are, they're not as thick, well, though some of them are thicker than Epic Collections, but they are thick books. This one here is $34.99. And in here, we have Daredevil 9 through 15 and 51 through 55. So you have David Mack coming in as the writer. You have Joe Quesada drawing it with Dave Ross and Jimmy Palmiotti doing the inks. Daredevil 12 is collected after the main story arc, and I'll explain why in a little bit. And then Daredevil 51 through 55, all written and drawn by David Mack. So we have the introduction of Maya Lopez, who is this deaf character that was introduced through David Mack writing this book. Now, the most important thing I will say about this is that the character was created by David Mack, and I think Joe Quesada wanted to introduce her in the pages of Daredevil, because he had been drawing Daredevil. He relaunched Daredevil with Kevin Smith. So all of this takes place immediately after Guardian Devil. So Matt he's down on his, when the hell is he not down on his luck? Never mind. I would suggest reading at least Guardian Devil before reading this book in case you're just interested, even if you're just interested in the character of Echo, because Guardian Devil, something big happens in the life of Matt Murdock, and that this story will spoil what happens within those first 7 issues. So he meets this young lady named Maya Lopez. She's deaf, but she has a secret. She's also an assassin hired by the Kingpin, with the whole history with the Kingpin, that is hired to go and kill Daredevil. And she wants to kill Daredevil for a very specific reason that I can't say here because it will spoil how all this comes together and what ends up happening within the story. So you can find out for yourself. And what's really cool is that in between issues 11 and 13, they were running a little bit behind. So they decided to print issue number 12, which was just kind of give them a break, right? Quesada and David Mack. And issue number 12 was the fill-in issue. It is written by Quesada and Palmiotti, but Rob Haynes draws it. Now, they didn't put it right in between 11 and 13. They put it at the end of the story arc, which is the same way they collected it in the oversized hardcover and in the omnibus. So it does take place during that time, but it's like a flashback. It's like Matt reminiscing about all these people that have come into his life. And then we get the next story arc, which is called Vision Quest. This is pretty much the story of Echo. This one's interesting because it was supposed to be originally a mini-series, but to give Bendis and Malieve a break after that big fight, what was that, in issue number 50, I think, where they had a bunch of guest artists come in, they decided to put this in the Daredevil comics. So this became issues 51 through 55. This is not collected in the Bendis Omnibus. It's been collected in trade, and it's been collected in standard size hardcover. Now it's here in this collection. If you're expecting a lot of Daredevil in this, not really. This is more about a quest of this young lady trying to figure out her past. I say there's not much Daredevil, and there he is. But also making amends with her past. Trying to figure out who she is and where she wants to be. And of course, if you've read another team book, she does end up joining a team book, and long before Jason Aaron's run happens. That's all I will say about that. This particular book has 296 pages. In the back, you're going to see some sketches and the art process, and it retails for $34.99. The Amazing Spider-Man Epic Collection Volume 2, Great Responsibility. I do love the name, right? The first one was Great Power, this one is Great Responsibility. And here we have Amazing Spider-Man 18 through 38 and annual number 2. This particular time, the book retails for $49.99, and it has 504 pages. So we're back to the Stan Lee and Steve Ditko era of Spider-Man, and it has probably one of my top 5, maybe top 3 favorite stories of Spider-Man, and that is If This Be My Destiny. It introduces us not to the Green Goblin, but Norman Osborn. So in here you get to find out how they're connected, in case you haven't read that before. We are introduced to the Scorpion in this particular issue. The mask, what was it, the crime master? That character shows up here. Oh, J. Jonah's robot shows up through this particular epic collection. We have the Beetle coming in, fighting Johnny Storm. It's not his first appearance, though. This is, I think it's his second appearance. Then we have these wonderful Steve Ditko pinups through here. And you have the crime circus right here. The Clown Masters of Menace, with the Ringmaster showing up. The big fights against not just the Green Goblin, but they seem to like team up between villains here. There's a lot more team ups in this particular book than the first one. It seems like people were really fond of that first annual, that they wanted more and more of the villains teaming up with each other. And of course, Peter Parker having lady issues, so personal issues on top of just wearing a mask and having to fight all of these villains. And yes, like I said, there is definitely team-ups here between the Crime Master and the Green Goblin to go after Peter Parker. That's one of my favorite covers. I love that cover of the Molten Man against Spider-Man. Just very awesome. I love the contrast that Ditko used. And then Sam Rosen doing the lettering here. The return of Sandman. Now, this is the annual number 2 right here. So this has been collected not just in the Spider-Man books, but also in the Doctor Strange books. Because It does feature Doctor Strange, but also it's Steve Ditko on art. And of course featuring Spider-Man, Sandman, Doctor Strange, and this villain right here. And this is Xandu, who will be the villain for this particular annual. And then we have some pinups back here of the Crime Master, Jonas Robot, the Scorpion, the Beetle. That's his original costume. You do have the Scorpion coming back quite a number of times. I think 3 times in this one he shows up. This is the story of the cat right here. Not the black cat, but the cat. And this begins the If This Be My Destiny, which I like to call a trilogy. I don't know how anybody else feels about that. You know, you have the Gwen Stacy story, and then you have this whole thing about Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. Whenever he's trapped underneath a bunch of rubble. Oh, I love this story so much. It's a very iconic moment. So iconic that, you know, they've used it in the movies. I think twice they've used it in the movies. And somebody told me that they used it in one of the video games, but I've been out of the loop on games for so long. But yeah, it's just him and how he's going to let everybody down because he's being crushed to death and he can't do this. And he just pushes himself to just have this will to lift this. Oh my gosh, that moment right there. That iconic splash page just... You don't even need my narrative. That is so badass. Oh, I love... Like, that is one of my favorite moments in comics. I mean, that's what comics mean to me. Like, not giving up. And just keep pushing forward. I love it. You have the return of Kraven the Hunter. And again, the Molten Man showing up. Is this the Meteor? I think that's the Meteor story here. Yeah, When Falls the Meteor. I like that costume design, honestly. Not a lot of use of that particular character. And then, of course, Peter Parker starting to develop more and more feelings for that beautiful blonde Gwen Stacy there. Just a guy named Joe. I think this is the story of Joe Smith, if I'm not mistaken. And then, of course, some of the layouts, thumbnail sketches, original sketches for covers, and then pencils by Steve Ditko. My gosh, that's awesome to own that stuff. And then the cover production right here. This is the original rendering of Spidey, how he looked. Then, of course, editors would step in and be like, hey, he looks a little off. How about we change that a little bit? And the Marvel Masterworks trade paperback covers, including that iconic scene. The other Epic collections available. Holy moly. This book has 504 pages, and like I mentioned, this one retails for $49.99. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing any of these books, don't forget to check out our sponsor, cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was your preview of all the books coming out this week from Marvel Comics. Let me know in the comments down below if you are picking any of these up, if you were hoping for that Spider-Man Epic Collection. I know that was a most wanted for a lot of my viewers. But which ones you're picking up? And a big thank you to everybody that told me that it was better to see the covers on the thumbnail of the video than the spine. So thank you all so much for that input. Could not be doing these videos without you all. That's it, everyone. Stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.